And she said to me, "You're not a witch, Blue, you're that which is needed." And that hit home for me in such a deep way, is that to listen, genuinely listen in the space to that which is needed, transcending the identity construct that I had built, or that I need to hide behind to create some sort of validation of who it is that I am in the world, but to actually melt myself into that which is needed. Now, this is a level of empathy that this brother that you're looking at, that became the bottle or became the spoon, because he was that which is needed, and to be that which is needed is to merge with the object to then be able to bend it from the inside out. That is a high level of empathy. And that also is a story of testament of the power of our minds and the power of our stories.
Blu, welcome on the show. What are you most excited about right now in your life? What is most alive for you in the moment?
Well, what's most alive for me in this moment is I'm podcasting with you after such a long time of like going back and forth. This is actually officially happening. And I haven't been a guest on someone's podcast in a really hot minute. I've been interviewing people nonstop, but to actually be in the other seat and the other side of it is really exciting for me. So that's like, I guess in this moment, what's most alive is my gratitude to be on this podcast with you and to join the onslaught of epic humans that you've had on your show up to this point. And also be able to witness you in your genius and in your frame. And I'm grateful to be here, first and foremost. And then in my life, like outside of this very moment, but yet in this chapter of my book, I would say that I am passionate about what it is that I do. And so I love waking up in the morning knowing that I have a blank slate to continue to create from my highest excitement and my greatest joy, and know when I rest at night that what I love to do genuinely inspires and impacts other people. So it's creating a win-win-win, which fills me with vitality and fills me with passion to fuel into my creation. So that's what's most alive for me right now, is the ability to create from my heart.
And I've had the honor of witnessing sort of from afar you unfolding this journey and writing your book of Blu along the way. And right now, I just wanted to ask you sort of, when you're tuning into that book that you're writing, what chapter do you feel that you are on right now? What would you title that chapter? Sort of what would be the context of the chapter you're living through right now?
I would say that this name of this chapter would be From Sad Bitch to Bad Bitch, a Reclamation.
Hey, explain. Give us a little background on that.
Well, first and foremost, I really love the question. It's super unique. It's a great intro. And secondly, I would say that this chapter has been where like chaos and beauty sit side by side. And if you know anything about astrology, one of my ruling planets is Pluto, and Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth. And so that is just a constant theme in my life, is that there are going to be times when I am brought to my knees and just completely like the things that I created some sort of identity in, or some sense of validation that lives outside of me, some relationship, some job, some living place, whatever it is, that understanding of who I am from something outside of myself. When that crumbles, and that definitely has happened over the last year, it's a big recalibration of actually what's important, what's essential, and what's genuinely on my altar. And so one of them, Reggie, one of my dear sisters, she said to me, there's nothing more powerful than coming to the altar naked. And I think that there is just these cycles in my life where I just hit a death process. And in my instance, it was the death of a relationship, and the death of like my home living environment, the death of like my relationship to a certain community, like just a lot happened that just touched my core wound of abandonment and rejection, my core wound of worthiness, like, but recognizing also that if I'm identifying myself through this relationship or through through this place that I live or through this community is actually very problematic, because when a sense of self is placed in something external, it's always subject to change. And therefore, then who am I without it? And so that's the necessary moments of those death processes, is that it brings me closer to my authenticity, to my vulnerability, to my home of my essence of who I am, to start to live from a life from the inside out, being inherently worthy because I say so. And no one external can, whether their involvement or their lack thereof, has any type of participation in how I sense my worth. And so that's ultimately what that season was, from sad bitch being like sad. Like I hit like a level of sadness and almost depression, I would say, because it lasted so long, where I didn't feel like I had really anything to offer, that I felt like I was kind of withering away. And I felt a really deep core wound of abandonment be hit. And that just, when, you know, it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, when something finally hits on a core wound, it's actually got nothing to do with the situation present, but more to do with the foundation of how I'm speaking to myself from a moment that happened at 7. That is now being reactivated through this relationship, that's allowing me to actually access a core belief that's not inherently supporting my path or my dharma. So I do sense, and being 4 planets in Scorpio, like the death and rebirth ruled by Pluto, it's super strong for me. And at the same time, when I can apply the higher understanding, even amidst the grief and the pain and the struggle, that it's happening for me, then I will always come and have a glow up of a bad bitch on the other side of the sad bitch season. So that has been the piece of like from sad bitch to bad bitch. It's a reclamation of who I've actually always been since birth, but created a story that was laced over like a veneer on my reality that wasn't allowing me to receive the beauty of what it actually hit. And so, of course, some sort of death of that identity construct or story had to happen. And it's painful because we become attached or identified with those stories. So that was, I mean, in a vague, I guess, without going into the nitty-gritty details, is the archetypal experience of what happened. But I'm now currently in this like, oh shit, like I think about like, what is that song? I don't need a man to make me feel good. I get up on my own. Like that's like singing in my head. It's I was like, okay, like cool. I'm single for the first time in 7 years. I'm like pouring all of my love into my creations, and I'm surrounded by incredible sisters that are supporting me, that we have a sisterhood, that we have a focus and co-create together, and building out my offering of my dreams. And I've got my own back. And I think that's the most important thing here, is like, what would it look like to be the mother of myself? What would it look like to be the father of myself? What would it look like to know that in those times of challenge, I don't abandon myself? And I think that's really what it's come down to, is that I'm no longer abandoning myself. And I think I can say that for the first time in a very long time. So it's a reclamation.
Yeah. And that's a big reflection for me as well, because over the past 2 years also, I've faced this sort of energy of heartbreak and relationships transforming into another thing that needs to come through. And this insight came through that was, your heart never breaks closed. It can only break open. So it's sort of like when we're going through that transformation where our heart sort of feels that break, it's only expanding. And the heart is that frequency that magnetizes new things, new creations, new opportunities. So on the other side of that, what are you now feeling that you're magnetizing into your life, coming through with a more open heart than before?
I love your questions. You're a great interviewer, by the way.
I learned from the best.
Yo, but it's coming from within too. Like, you got it. That Mercury and Leo. So what am I magnetizing? Well, first and foremost, I'm understanding what magnetism really means, and what is it the thing that goes into magnetism. And I've learned that, yesterday I had a moment yesterday where I was just annoyed. I was like, pissed. And I was like annoyed at everything, and I realized like it's actually nothing to do with the things I'm annoyed at. I'm the common denominator here, and I was annoyed. So I was like, what was going on internally? But one of the things that annoyed me yesterday, what Peter Griffin would say, what really grinds my gears, is I was annoyed at like looking on Instagram and seeing all these carbon copy Instagram models that are like creating this like unconscious deep sense of inadequacy in my subconscious while I'm scrolling through that I don't look like this, or my body's not like this, or my face isn't like this, and I'm not going to attract a partner because I don't look like this, and like creating this like weird story of comparison and judgment and feeling annoyed at what societal's expectation of beauty is, and like feeling triggered by it. But when I actually really sat with the trigger and I allowed myself to marinate into it, I actually asked myself, what is true magnetism? Because this is fun to look from the five senses, to scroll through and be like, oh, beautiful. But what is true, long-standing, long-lasting magnetism that actually allows a relationship to always stay fresh and to always be intriguing, is born from a deep level of authenticity. Is to actually like take the masks off, and to be witnessed in our challenge, to be witnessed in our beauty, to be witnessed in our creativity, to be witnessed in our chaos and our madness, and to be witnessed in our polished version too, and a full spectrum that actually creates this magnetism and the authenticity and I guess the authenticity goes hand in hand with the magnetism. So how could I use the trigger to deepen my relationship with magnetism and to deepen my relationship with authenticity? And so I had this idea to do a podcast with no makeup, no fancy outfit, like just to like me in my sweats, just having a chat, and to bring it back to what I wish to see more of in the world, and to use my trigger to actually fire my passions to bring a fresh wave of creativity into my life. And so what I would say is filling in that space and utilizing the word of magnetism is to ask myself, where have I been caught up in societal's expectation of beauty? Where have I been caught up in societal's expectation of what success is? Where have I been caught up that I am living just to pay my bills and to get afloat and to want to get more money? And how can I hold compassion for those things that I've actually uncovered within my subconscious mind that's got caught up in it? And how can I replace it with a deeper level of authenticity, creative expression, making music, painting, getting in my overalls, not wearing any makeup, and feeling completely, deeply worthy because of the essence of who I am and the way that I choose to express myself, and allowing the sacred thing to be what is. And so what I want to fill these spaces with is more art, more paintings, more music, like sitting down in front of my guitar and just letting a song come through, and then pouring my challenge and my heartbreak into lyrics that then give me an outlet and to turn the alchemical process of a challenging moment into something beautiful. Like this is actually what I want to fill these spaces with. And so how can I use the 5 T's, as Rebecca would say this to me? Trust the trigger to teach. Trust the trigger to teach me something. And I'm triggered about this because it's something that I want to see more of within myself. And so it taught me what I can do about it and stop pointing the blame and just being like, Instagram model, and actually be like, hey, what would it look like to create a podcast that's actually no makeup and no fancy hair extensions and none of this stuff, and actually like create something that's raw, real, and authentic, so that I can create something that I think my daughter would be inspired by. And I don't have a daughter yet, but like eventually, you know? So, I guess that's what I want to fill it with.
Yeah. And it almost feels like every time we're authentic to ourselves, we are sort of giving a permission slip to whoever is witnessing that in the moment. When you see someone doing their street art, or you walk down Venice Beach and someone's just playing whatever music and it's like coming through from their soul, it's like it's a level of respect and admiration that is gained energetically. Just it's nonverbal as well. You say that 93% of communication is nonverbal, which that also brings us to this moment where you started to create art because you found out when you were around 23 years old that you had a hereditary hearing dis-ease, let's say, and it was only going to get progressively worse. And you were told, we don't know there is no cure for this. And I don't want to get into the energy of comparison, but I also heard one time that you mentioned your brother who had also been diagnosed with that. And you mentioned that he is almost deaf now. And you guys started at the same place and went on 2 different trajectories. Yours was a completely different path. So I'd love to see the differences in the path that you've taken with your brother that was essentially diagnosed the same thing. This goes back to like the epigenetics, that your environment creates your reality, your environment creates whatever needs to happen in your body. So what happened in that trajectory that was different? You started to create art, you started getting into all of this, but really just walk us through what happened. What path did you take?
It makes me, it's like, I feel like a sentimental, emotional appreciation in this moment for your level of research before this podcast. I know that I've mentioned it already, but like, I'm really grateful as a host for understanding of like really learning about your guests before they come on. So thank you for that. And I love the nicheness and the uniqueness and the directness of the questions. I would say that my hearing diagnosis has been my greatest challenge in this life up until this point. It's because when the world starts to go silent, it's not something that you just accept and then it just is the way that it is. It's requiring a level of surrender on almost like an hourly basis, if not a minutely basis, of like, wow, I'm in a group setting right now and I can't hear what's going on. Wow, I'm sitting in front of a master that I've traveled all the way around the world to sit and listen to, and I can't hear him speak through the microphone, and my hearing aids aren't working. And to having to surrender in those moments, or like going on a date with somebody and like being high alert and wanting to kind of impress them and not having a clue what they're saying and feeling disconnected from the moment. Like, I've learned the greatest deal of surrender in my entire life through this process, and I still continue to be a student of it. However, yeah, I was diagnosed about 10 years ago. My brother and I were diagnosed around the same time. We went to both get our hearing checked, and we were just starting to notice the world was getting dull. Like, the sounds were dulled out. The world was getting quiet, and both of us noticed it at the same time. So we went to go get our hearing tested at the same time. And at the time of the hearing results, mine was a little bit worse than his, but it was pretty similar. And just to notice the difference between how we perceive the world. I perceive the world through the lens of like, everything is happening for me to a degree. I just feel that even though I don't understand it in the moment, I have a deeper trust in a higher order. I think my brother has just a different way of perceiving the world, and there's no right or wrong way, and definitely not feeding into the frequency of comparison, but more so just recognizing for contrast how he perceives the world and how I perceive the world, and being diagnosed at the same time, and then being like, now go out into the world for the next decade and see what happens. And I've gone so deep on my healing path of really understanding, first and foremost, what am I not listening to? Like, what am I actually not paying attention to? What don't I want to hear? Where do I tune out when people are talking? Where am I when someone's talking, thinking about something else, but like only being enough in the conversation just to be able to give keywords to keep the conversation going, but I'm not actually fully here? And what don't I want to hear? And also I got left with the question of, if I'm at a dinner table and everybody's chatting and I'm sitting around power players that are like, you know, in a powerful space having really important conversations, and I can't hear what's going on, everyone's laughing and joking and I don't know what the joke was or the punchline, and I'm sitting there and I haven't said a single word the entire time, facing off with the question that, is my presence alone enough if I'm not contributing to the space? And the answer was no. Like, my presence alone is not enough. I have to be saying something. I have to be doing something. I have to be bringing something to the table, because otherwise
in some
I
sort
have
of
to
way.
perform. Exactly. And so I had to face off with some really big questions of like, what am I not listening to? Where am I not giving my full presence? And am I worthy just by being me? And I went for the past decade, I've gone into the core of those belief systems and realizing, you know, we think about on average 60,000 thoughts a day. We have about 75 trillion cells in our body, and their two jobs is to listen and respond. So what is the story I'm telling myself around what is? Is it empowering or disempowering? Because our thoughts over a prolonged period of time are creating our lenses of the way that we perceive reality. There are 8 billion people on this planet. There's 8 billion different realities happening simultaneously through the lens, which are the stories we tell ourselves around what is. And so when I went deep into what are my stories, where did they come from, why are they continuing, and how can I rewrite the stories, that's created an empowering reality through a disempowering diagnosis. And so my hearing seems to be in a position now where it's paused. It hasn't got worse, it hasn't got better, but it's paused. So I'll be in spaces and people won't even notice. People won't even realize what it is that I'm navigating, even though the gift of the hearing decrease is that I've had to rely on my other senses to navigate my space. If I'm not 1000% present with you in a conversation, I'm completely out. And it's a beautiful thing in the sense that every single person that comes into my line of sight that has my attention will get 100% of me. And when I'm on my phone and you're talking from behind me, I'm not going to give you any percentage because I can't hear what you're saying. So what it's done is it's allowed me to navigate the world through a deep sense of presence with people. And Maya Angelou talked about how people won't remember what you said or what you wore, or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. And that was something that was a massive emphasis, was going like, okay, how can I make everybody that's in my line of sight feel seen, acknowledged, heard, and loved through giving them the greatest gift that exists, which is my pure presence, my undivided attention. It costs nothing, but it's the greatest gift we could ever give. And so navigating the world over the past decade from this kind of mindset, you can imagine it's turned into many gifts. However, from the mindset of like, this is the worst thing that could happen to me, I'm going to isolate myself from the world, I'm mad and I'm bitter about it, well, that also is going to create your experience, and therefore it's going to prolong or like evolve the hearing loss to a point where we're almost deaf. So to witness our diagnosis from parallel, to witness our difference of internal conversation, and to witness the challenge and gifts present themselves based off of a byproduct of what story you're telling us. So it's been very fascinating to watch this diagnosis play out in two different timelines simultaneously, and two different ways of perceiving the world and perceiving the diagnosis. So yeah. I'd say that it's my greatest challenge, and it's been my greatest gift. It's been my thing that has made me me.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning to dance with it. There's a lot of emotion around it. There's a lot of charge. And at the same time, I feel empowered.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I asked you the question, you didn't dive straight into, oh, well, he went down this modality of healing, I went down this modality. You focused it on sort of, I was more willing to go within. I was more willing to go deep into the depths of my story, of myself, of my trauma, so that I could look at this diagnosis from a different lens, from an energetic perspective. And sort of also on this show, what it's evolving into right now, what I feel is coming through, and I follow a lot my curiosity, is sort of highlighting the new type of human that is emerging in the world right now. And that's, you know, when I set that intention, is that I'm really excited to see what is next for humans, our potential within us. All of a sudden, channelers, mediums, people that can lucid dream, like a lot of extrasensory perception gifts started getting attracted to this show. And you also said once that you're a representation, or also an introduction to the realm of extrasensory perception through based off of the feeling. Mm-hmm. And you've sort of had this truth filter that whenever you're meeting someone, maybe you can't hear 100% of the words that they're saying, but you can tap in to their energy field, or tap into exactly the vibratory nature of what's coming through them. And that's unlocked a lot for you. That's almost like a superpower as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So looking into the future of humanity, what new extrasensory perceptions are you seeing in the world that are coming through, and sort of what is next when we go beyond the five senses?
What I sense is that there's an evolutionary process underway, whether we like it or not. Everywhere we look, left, right, and center, even those that we were least expecting to ask the deeper questions are starting to ask. There are people that are deeply dependent and reliant on an identity that lives from outside of them. Can be a very painful time. It's also a really challenging time right now for the minorities on the planet, for those that the resources are not distributed evenly, for those that are just in survival mode right now, as the planet is going through massive energetic shifts, climate change, distribution of power, how we relate to the governments, like actually seeing behind the scenes of what is really happening. The veil is becoming very thin for us to actually start asking the deeper questions. Simultaneously, as discombobulating, painful, and kind of like, I would say, what the fuck moments, in the same breath, there is a beauty that is being born of an awareness and an evolution of consciousness where people are no longer as easy to control. And this is the inward journey of like a deep shift of asking the deeper questions instead of just following orders and actually going, well, why is it that way? Well, it's just what the government says. Yeah, but why does the government say that? Like, is that actually honoring life? Because we're starting to really see very clearly whether our situations, systems, and corporations in place that are not honoring life, it's all about profit. Yeah. And so it's becoming super clear, but it's through people going through an internal shift in the evolution of consciousness. And Richard Rudd talks about by the year of 2027, the children that are going to be born from that year onwards are being born with a expanded DNA, with a 12-strand DNA, where they will not be able to be controlled because they come in with an awareness that's far beyond the manipulation tactics that are in place right now. So as much as we are worried about like what humanity is going to do for themselves, Mother Nature is also in the evolutionary process has got a playing card that says, hey, you know what, I'm going to bring the next generation in that actually knows what's up. And instead of us projecting onto nature what we think is best and extracting from her and her natural resources, what would it look like if people straight off the bat were entering to this world without that programming around fear or manipulation or control or guilt or shame? And so I really believe those that are doing the work right now, what I mean by the work is that internal journey of facing off with themselves, asking the deeper questions and the whys. Well, then no longer are our children going to need to process our trauma for us. Like, our generation is still processing the generation before. We're still processing mum and dad's unresolved trauma, and we're still having to go through it, whether we've got our head in a purge bucket. We're not just purging for ourselves, but we're purging for the past generation and the one before that. But what would it look like if actually mum and dad decided to do the deep work, to no longer blame the world or to others as to why we feel the way that we feel, to trust the trigger to teach, to face off with ourselves, to go through our ego deaths, to purge out all the unnecessary, to release the shame and the guilt, mentally, physically, spiritually, sexually, financially, and multidimensionally across all vibrations of existence, and then to birth children into the world where we actually learn from them. We're going to see children that no longer have to go through 15 years of programming and then another 15 years of unprogramming to eventually align with their dharma, to then be able to live their purpose and their service to the whole. So I believe that it's an individual responsibility, the ability to respond, to actually create a more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. And it's through our individual willingness to face off with ourselves and end the conflict within our own minds, which is going to allow us to see the end of the conflicts on this planet. So ultimately, there's free will. There's many different timelines. I truly believe Earth is going to be fine. It's humanity that we get to be worried about in the sense of our survival. This has happened many times. We've gone extinct many times. And so Earth's been around here for a very long time. And I think that she will be fine. I think that, Matias said this to me once, which I thought was hilarious. Oh my God. He said, humans are like the pubic lice of the planet. Because it's annoying, but it serves a role. It's got a role on it. And I was like, wow, you're such a deep, profound human. And the fact that you said that, like, we are running this earth thinking that we're mightier than thou. But nature has always got the final playing card. And at the end of the day, we can't eat money. Like, we can't drink money or oil. Like, we're extracting Mother Nature of her natural resources just for what profit? Well, we don't have a planet to spend that money on if we're going to destroy it. So I think that there's like a recalibration of we're moving into an Aquarian age, which is recalibrating leadership, and placing position of leadership within more of a dominion model as a domination model. And what I mean by that is, like, there's the pyramid where somebody or 1% sit at the top and back orders down to the rest of the individuals, but it's a very stagnant model. No one can move within that position. Whereas we move into a dominion, it's more of we sit in a circle, and there's a lot of energy flow that can flow within that, and it takes time to rebuild these and rebuild these structures. But what we're seeing now is the crumbling of all that's rotten at the foundation. By the nature of evolution, it has to come up and out. So it's in the death process. How much can we have compassion for ourselves, compassion for those around us, to set ourselves up in a way to die well within our own individual beings, within our community, within our family, within the world, and recognize that this too is happening for us, to actually build from the foundation up a world worth leaving for our children and our children's children. So I have an immense amount of hope because I've reconciled my relationship with death. I'm not afraid of dying, so therefore I can fully live. Yeah. And I think that that's in direct contrast. If we're afraid to die, then we're afraid to fully go all in and live and love as much of our capacity. So once I reconciled my relationship with death, my life started to actually become pretty fruitful because I wasn't afraid to fully be here and recognize that there's divine dissatisfaction, which is that there's an infinite amount of spaces in the world to love up on and support and nurture. But if I can leave one corner, one tiny little corner more beautiful than I found it, then I feel fulfilled. Yeah.
Beauty. And that's your life's work. Mm-hmm. And Richard Rudd, he talks about this ring of the whirlwind, which you're sort of briefly mentioning what's going on in the planet right now, but bringing it through this technology of the gene keys, the 49 and the 55. And we've mentioned a lot this death process, and the 49th is the city of ultimate rebirth. And Richard has said this is sort of like a collective awakening that humanity is going through. So what could you tell us about those two gene keys in particular that are recalibrating humanity as a whole?
So 49 and what was the other one?
55, freedom.
55. So 49 is the reaction, the gift of rebirth and the city of revolution. And then 55 is victimization and double freedom. So 55th gene key is the heart of the gene keys. It's the longest gene key of all of them. And it's about true freedom. But true freedom can only be born when we're no longer being a victim of external circumstances. So where in my life have I blamed an ex-lover, blamed the money in my bank account, blamed my boss, blamed that person that cut me off while I was driving, blamed my family for why I am the way that I am? That victimization frequency can only emanate and call in more to be a victim of. Victimization is the shadow or the anti essence of freedom. You can't be free when you blame the world. And so it's easy, especially even in the spiritual community of well, it's the reptilian overlords that are doing this to us. And it's maybe actually it's just humans that created this. And so therefore it's humans that can shift it too. Maybe it's just our desire for
that
greed
empowers
and power.
Rather than disempowers.
Yeah, because I remember I also went down the loophole, the rabbit hole of oh my God, the planet's ruled by reptilian overlords and the Hollywood elite and
the shapeshifters.
The shapeshifters and maybe there are. And in Hollywood, I'm sure there's some really sketchy stuff going on. I personally have not seen it myself yet. The narrative that says that there is a reptilian agenda on this planet is disempowering for me because I feel like there's nothing I can do. I feel like helpless. I feel like violated and angry and a victim of. And when I really tune into the essence that it's actually humans and their desire for power and greed and their ego has taken over the show and built systems that are so big and so fast that no one human can no longer stop it. But yet actually, if we collectively come together, we can create a new shift in the way that we perceive reality. No, that's now empowering. I'm going to want to empower the people around me to live their best life. I'm going to want to empower myself to live a life of alignment and trust. That feels to me like I can actually do something. And I feel like my part, one of 8 billion people, as small as I am, I'm also mighty in my own universe. And so I feel like I can do something. I feel like my part can make a difference. And I feel like together we can be unstoppable if we're powerful alone. So that's the victimization frequency. And then there's the double freedom. Freedom lies on the other side of it, recognizing that life is a prison or a playground. And it all depends on the way that you perceive whatever it is. whatever's right in front of you. And actually, some of the most freest, liberated people I've ever met are the ones that have nothing. The ones that when I go to trekking through the Himalayas, and I stayed with a family that literally, like, the kids were playing with marbles, the mum was cooking in the kitchen, dad was out doing work, and they had nothing. They lived in like little mud huts, and those children and that family were the happiest family I've ever stayed with. They were so present and grateful for the small things. They were not plagued by unworthiness. They were not plagued with consumerism. They were not plagued with materialism. They had family and they had meals, and yes, they had hardships, but their perception of reality was very different. And it was a massive wake-up call for me of, instead of going out to these countries and being like, I'm supposed to teach you something, it's like the white savior complex. It's like, what would it look like if I became your humble student and sat in there and got a massive reality check around what's important and what freedom means? It's not based off of more. It's not more consumerism. It's not having Amazon Prime unlocked whenever you want anything and it delivered within 12 hours to your front door. That is not freedom. It's escapism for feeling something much deeper that's under the surface, that's still rooted in some kind of victimization, which is not allowing true freedom to live. And so this is the heart of the Gene Keys, and it talks about relationships, it talks about work, it talks about Dharma, it covers so many different areas of a level of freedom that we don't even know is really fully possible, because we don't know what we don't know. But then there's also the Gene Key 49, which is reaction. We're all fighting each other. We're all so caught up in the drama that we're not coming together and actually, like, together with our impact and with our resources, we can actually create something sustainable and long lasting that our future children will feel. Yeah. But we're too busy fighting each other. We're all mad at each other. And we look into the news or into the mainstream media and we're looking at, well, this group and this group are against each other, or this was a hate crime against this group. And so we get caught up in the drama of me versus them. And so, of course, we need to protect ourselves when the enemy's outside of ourselves, but recognizing also that at the other side of reaction is the rebirth. It's the revolution in itself, is to actually love yourself enough to recognize that there is no other, and to start formating and coming together for the revolution, recognizing that anything rotten at the foundation, talked about this in the 49th Gene Key, anything rotten at the foundation of society, of ourselves, of our relationships, it's all coming out right now. It's all being purged for a revolution of love. But you can't fill in new things into spaces that are already full. So we've got to purge first before we can actually rewrite the narrative. So yeah, the 49th Gene Key and the 55th Gene Key are like front and center in what's happening right now on the planet, for sure.
I had sort of a more fun personal question, which is, Blue stands for beauty, love, and unity. I was wondering why you didn't add the E at the end if your purpose is empathy.
Wow, you're so good. You're such a brilliant interviewer. I'm so impressed. I didn't even think about that. Wow.
That was a shower thought. I'm like, because I feel that innately I'm a researcher. More than sort of an interviewer. So I see myself more in like, I love the research part. Well, I love all of the parts, but for some reason I came across your Gene Keys chart when I was researching for Richard's interview. And then that's when I saw the empathy, and I was like, she should have just connected it, be like Blue with the E at the end.
That's brilliant. I think where my head was at was that I hadn't put together the empathy piece, and I had just looked at my life's work and it said to restore beauty, love, and unity on the planet. And I was like, oh my God, it's Blue. And I kind of like without the E because it makes it a little bit more unique.
A little mysterious.
However, the E would be a great contribution in the empathy piece. But yes, my purpose in the Gene Keys is empathy. And I think that that's a really interesting thing that you pointed out that I have never thought of before, which is really rare for me, for somebody to point something out about my own chart that I'm not familiar with.
And I'd love to go into your journey with unlocking this purpose of empathy. Where in your life do you see it most present? Whether that's even in relationships, and how do you leverage empathy, not only on a personal level, but how can also as a collective, we can channel more of that empathy into what we do.
So within the gene keys, there's 3 different frequencies. There's the shadow, the gift, and what Richard calls the Siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word, which is like maximum amount of light entering the DNA, the state of enlightenment within the highest expression of that archetype. And so the Siddhi is empathy. And I think that the word empathy gets tossed around quite a lot without us really fully understanding what the word means. And there's the gift of like discernment, but like empathy is to go inside someone's body as if it is your own and to feel their emotions as if they are your own. That level of empathy is like, it's pretty deep and profound. And I would say that my gift of discernment is on a daily basis. You know, even just what we were talking about before we started recording, who I work with, who I choose to surround myself with, who are the people I follow online, what is the food that I eat, what feels like expansion over contraction. That is my discernment. And every moment I can make a choice using my discernment of what feels in vibrational alignment and support and inspiration to my life. The Siddhi of empathy, we're working with like, I would say that where it shows up for me is in my healing work. My empathy has gone through the roof since my hearing has decreased. And it's because I'm feeling the person in front of me, recognizing that words lie all the time, but energy never does. And so when somebody's angry, I feel it as if it's my own emotion. I'm like, wait, but where's this? Because there's no emotion behind it, or there's no no trigger behind it. So then when I'm feeling that, but there's no trigger behind it, then I'm scanning the space. Well, whose energy am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling this person's energy. I can tell by their body language. They've got their arms folded. They're looking down. They're shifty in their movements. Their feet are facing towards the door. Like, this is all micro understandings of someone's body language that I start picking up on, but my empathy is going as if it's my own. I'm feeling anger. So what's the beautiful thing is with the tools of self-awareness, you can support somebody to actually transmute that emotion and move it through. So speak into the space, to go connect with them, go send them some love. Like, there's an opportunity to use this empathy, but the discernment is whether this is my own or whether this is somebody else's. And so it's 2 sides of the same coin. It's like, it's a challenge. It's also a beautiful superpower. But the predominant place where my empathy gets activated is when I'm working on people on the healing mat. And this is not an offering that I talk about very often. It's not something that is very outward facing. I did one podcast with Aubrey Marcus where I went into depth around what it is that I do. Outside of that, However, my life is lived from a deep place of vulnerability and transparency. So when the opportunity arises and it feels like a safe place to share, I'm open to talking about these things. And I just did a session with a sister who has Lyme's disease, and she's been struggling for many years. And I'm helping her come back into her body in the sense of retethering her soul back to her body, because Lyme's disease is kind of like, there's a root belief, I don't want to be here. It's not comfortable for me to be here. So I'll create like an autoimmune disease where I'm like literally eating myself.
The body's attacking itself.
The body's attacking itself as I don't want to be here. So the body's like, okay, your wish is my command. I'm going to attack myself. And so the work that we're doing is retethering her soul back into her body so that she genuinely wants to be here. And there was a moment when I had my hands on her heart and her chest plate, like right here. And there was a moment where I completely dissolved and I disappeared into her body. She didn't know if I was real or not. She was like, wait, did I make Blu up? Because I think that she just merged into my body. And I literally was on the inside of the crevices of her heart, and helping and bringing my awareness into those places to allow her to give and receive love as if it's safe again, it's trusted again, to receive love. Because when we receive our reality, when we receive our love, when we receive the people around us and their love, it's fun to be here. But when there are blocks around us allowing ourselves to receive the gift of our life, of course we don't want to be here. So that was when empathy came online very strongly, is when I'm in those spaces and I'm in those situations. Hi, everybody. And so that is for me predominantly where the empathy comes in, is when I'm working on people on the healing mat. And it's one of my most sacred favorite offerings to date. I don't charge for it. It's not something that I'm like outwardly facing with a service, but more so with a sister that I've cultivated a deep relationship with, or a brother that I've cultivated a deep relationship with, where there's trust. and they're going through something that really they need some support, I'll just pack my medicine bag, and I bring my little basket and bring all of my little shamanic tools that sit here on my altar, charging, and I go into the shamanic realm, and it's been massively activated for me since not being able to fully hear everything. I actually feel like I hear more than most, and it's hearing to the subtleties behind the words as opposed to the actual words themselves. And our body is always talking to us, and our body has a conversation, and our somatics. There's all this information like a zip file storage unit inside everybody's bodies, and it's about being quiet enough to be able to listen, and from that place activate empathy where there's no I and you, it's just we, and from that place bring your attention and intention together into the same spot, and it starts melting like butter. It's just an unconscious story that just sits there festering. And when you bring your awareness into it and start loving it and start reprogramming it and start bringing your attention and intention, it just starts to melt. It just dissolves. And it's just an unconscious program that's been running the show for God knows how long. So that's where my empathy really is activated. It's one of my favorite things to ever. And it's also something that I don't talk about very often.
Thank you for sharing that. What came up for me as an insight is sort of the greatest healers have the capability of becoming the other person, but also having the tools to aid in the process of knowing what it's like to be them, but then having the tools to sort of help them move through it. And even now what's coming through with quantum physics, we now know that there is nothing that is separate. And going off also the extrasensory perception, I was down the rabbit hole on YouTube, and I was seeing this guy who claimed to have telekinesis. So he could move objects with his hand and with his intention, and he would record it. And I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical, but also super open-minded. So I'm like, hey, that looks pretty cool. And when he had a video like sort of explaining what he was doing, he just said, no, I just become the bottle. I just become this pen, and then I can then move it. It's like taking our consciousness, and since we're all plugged into that collective consciousness, that one mind, it's just sort of knowing when to, again, discern this identity and then what is not that identity, what is actually true, what is actually real.
Yeah. And one of the greatest training grounds for me within that dissolving of one's own identity is that I spent 4 days and 4 nights in a darkness retreat, where it's literally like in a cave, kind of like a nice cushy cave in the middle of like the forest, and I couldn't see my hand. There was no difference between my eyes being open and my eyes being closed. And I spent 4 days and 4 nights in complete pitch black, and I completely dissolved my identity. I dissolved Blue. I dissolved my birth name, Charlotte. I dissolved my gender. I dissolved my age. I dissolved who I thought I knew myself to be based off of either being told or some intellectual concept, and to just allow the energy of what was most alive to breathe. And I shapeshifted into Lord knows what. Like I was a woman that was an old crone, and then I became this man, and then I went into ancient Egypt, and I was like literally shapeshifting into these different forms, realizing that our past lives are not actually past. They're current lives living all simultaneously through vibrational radio stations. So I could tune into different radio stations the second I dissolved my identity, dissolved my ego, dissolved what I look like from the outside in, and allow myself to feel into what was most alive. And sometimes that was on all fours, just like bawling my eyes out and screaming and raging. And another time it was dancing and playing with the infinite possibilities of all that is. Like there was such a wide range of expression, but what it allowed me to understand was the art of the shapeshifter to be that which is needed. And there's just been this thing of like, oh, Blue, she's a witch. And like, right, because from what we can all program, the work that I do is like witchcraft. But actually somebody said to me, her name is Isa Born, and she said to me, you're not a witch, Blue, you're that which is needed. Ooh. And that hit home for me in such a deep way, is that to listen genuinely listen in the space to that which is needed, transcending the identity construct that I had built, or that I need to hide behind to create some sort of validation of who it is that I am in the world, but to actually melt myself into that which is needed. Now, this is a level of empathy that this brother that you're looking at, that became the bottle or became the spoon, because he was that which is needed. And to be that which is needed is to merge with the object, to then be able to bend it from the inside out. That is a high level of empathy. Yeah. And that also is a story of testament of the power of our minds and the power of our stories. Because we're telling ourselves stories all the time, and for the most part, they're disempowering. But stories are for creation. So we're creating more worlds with the stories that we're telling ourselves. And the power of our stories will determine whether we have a powerful mind or we are being ruled by our unconscious desires. And that's the journey of mastery. That's the journey of self-awareness. And that's the journey that this brother seems to be tapping into, while also handing out a permission slip that we're all capable if we become curious enough to become the student of what's actually most alive internally.
And now that lesson of shape-shifting that you said that you had in the darkness, how did you carry that out into your regular daily life, sort of the shape-shifting aspect? She's not a reptilian, but your eyes turn.
Yeah, just start glitching. There's no reptilian overlords running the planet, and I'm like,
how do you become a shapeshifter in your daily life?
So for example, there's sister standing in front of me in the kitchen, and she's crying. And if I was to really listen to that, what is needed is to listen to her and to be really soft, nurturing, feminine essence. And so to just tap her back and not try and rush the process, and be with her in the patience and ask her what it is that she feels like she needs support with, and bring my voice down into a softer manner and a softer tone to nurse and to soothe her experience in that moment. An hour later, I'm working in a group dynamics, and there's so much feminine energy and there's no sense of direction. So now all of a sudden, come into my blue daddy mode, masculine energy. Right, this is what it is that we need to go over. This is the sense of direction. This is the time that we have to go over this. This is what I'm asking of you as individuals. This is the collective intention. What is your individual intention, and where are we going, and how much time do we have? Now that's masculine energy. That's the structure. Now that is also recognizing that this is what's needed in the space right now for us to get anything done. Then the next moment may come along. And for example, somebody has a really painful stomach or a headache. Like, Blue, have you got anything to support? Yeah, I can place my attention and intention into those places, bring some essential oils and breathe with you, and we can start moving the energy. Now all of a sudden activate the archetype of the healer. Right? It's like there's so many different archetypes. We're like a diamond, and there's like 64 faces. There's also 64 codons in our DNA. There's 64 gene keys. There's 64 aspects and outward facing expressions that each individual has. But when we become identified with one role, one archetype, one identity, we can no longer tap into the multifaceted, multidimensional nature of being human. And so that's what I mean by being that which is needed. Is it's still authentic. It's still genuine. It's still real. But it's that which is needed based off of a deep sense of listening, as opposed to me projecting what I think is needed in this space based off of not listening and force, rooted in some sense of unworthiness and trying to prove who I am. For me, the second I sense that from somebody that there's an agenda or they're forcing their identity onto the space, I retract. I'm like, that doesn't feel true, because it's not founded from a place of listening. And so I think that, a lot of the people that I have witnessed that are hard of hearing, that are blind, that I have some sort of sense deprived, is that actually their awareness is spiraling inwards. This is in the Radiance Sutra, 66th Sutra, which is talking about when there's one sense dampened or deprived by injury or age or deprivation, awareness spirals inwards. And once it's spiraled inwards, you can start to live life from perceiving people beyond their appearance.
Yeah.
Like, hell, you gonna come up in here like, oh, your sexy face, and you got your Instagram followers, and you're wearing all of the cool clothes, and you got your mala beads, but the essence is lacking because there's an agenda in the space, and I'm trying to get something from you. But we all get caught up in the trap because we're operating from our five senses, and so we perceive this person, and we see their following, and we see that they've got money, and we see that they're handsome, and so we fall into the trap. But it's the essence that actually is the most important thing. What is on the altar of that person's heart? What is their prayer? What is their why? Is it self-serving or is it whole-serving? Because that's what it brings down to, is the essence of the individual. And I have been caught up in the shadow of the Leo. I have Leo in my moon in my astrology. The shadow of the Leo is being distracted by the shiny things, being distracted by the fancy stuff, being distracted by how many followers that person has, or how famous they are, or how much they're creating, or how powerful they are, and getting caught up in it, and then realizing from the inside out that that person's essence is rotten. And so that's the shadow of the Leo. This is the light. Hey, you know, there's that Leo energy that we have that connection, but also in the same breath, when we can learn to train ourselves beyond appearance and into essence, then we have a truth filter that most people get caught up with. This is why we see in society people idolizing celebrity.
Yeah.
Hell, they're the most emptiest people that I know for the most part. Like, they are so lost and limited and don't have their freedom of expression and are run by big corporations that you see nothing about but are fueling and funding everything that they're doing. And we're placing them on a pedestal and idolizing them and getting caught up with the shiny and the shimmery and completely disconnecting from the essence of what is truly nurturing and valuable. I too have been caught up in that before in the past, and now my discernment of being able to weave into the truest essence is actually the thing that's most important to me. And so my friends will come from the most unsuspecting places, but it's usually because I can feel into the essence in the moment. When I met you, like first time in person, like I know that you had been filtering in my field more online, but for me, like I can't feel the essence fully. But as soon as I met you in person, I knew I definitely want to go on your podcast. I want to be friends with you. You're fucking epic, because I could feel where your heart was. I could feel where your prayer was. I could feel your essence that shine through everything else. And for me, that is the thing that builds worlds with people, is collaborations that genuinely care. And that, I think, the thing that's actually most important in this life is how much does somebody love? And I think that that's what true beauty stems from, is not what you can accomplish, how much you've achieved, but it's how much you love and let love in is what truly makes somebody beautiful.
Yeah. It's almost like we're born and we have that essence that you're talking about. And then the more time goes by, we just put on more layers and more layers. And just to relate to what you're talking about identity, that's been probably the biggest topic for me, you know, from my early childhood, where I came from a family, for the nature of my dad's work, we moved a lot. So, you know, I grew up until I was 16, moving around the United States. I was the most American Californian kid with my socks up to my knees, like the whole thing. And at 16, where you're sort of like finding who you are, my parents were like, we're going back to Colombia. And my first language was Spanish, but I had lost a lot of that. And going into a society, a very prestigious society in Colombia, and like trying to fit in, where do I fit in? I don't dress like anyone here. It sort of becomes like, am I going to play a character and then dim that essence, dim that light, dim who I am in order to please every single person around me so they could accept me and bring me into their circle, which definitely happened. And, you know, I'm a powerful manifester, so I'd be in these circles that I wanted to be in, but essentially I didn't feel that I was being myself when I was around them. And then this whole path of, you know, truly uncovering the layers. And it's what you said, we can be many different things. We're multidimensional. We can be certain archetypes in certain parts of the day where we're needed. And it's truly magical, because you can sort of choose and be intentional with, okay, in this moment, I want to be a student, or maybe in this moment, this person might need some wisdom I've accumulated. So I sort of transform into a teacher for them, or a guide, or, you know, there's so many different ways that we can go about it. And I really love that you brought up that concept of identity, and also the big difference of playing characters where it's not truly being aligned with who you are.
Yeah. And ultimately, our authenticity is our power. Our uniqueness is our power. And that's where our manifestation fuel comes from. It's like, not once have I been asked what GPA I got in college, but I have got myself into certain positions because people love to be around me. And people love to be in my presence. And I love to be in other people's presence that are being genuinely authentic to whatever flavor it is that they've chosen to rock in this life. Like, as long as it's authentic. If you're wearing a trash bag, but that's authentic to you, how are you going to be magnetic? Like, it's not about the external stuff. And I constantly catch myself in getting caught up in believing that my worth is placed in how I look. Specifically in relating to men, specifically being single and being in the dating pool, specifically watching all of the beautiful women that live in Los Angeles and all the Instagram models and the fillers and the lips and the facelifts and all the things and the boob jobs and the fancy clothes and all of this stuff that then catches the eyes of these men. And then me being like, well, I don't have that. Oh, that, and I get caught back up in it. And it's like, whoa. And it's this constant death and rebirth of these identity constructs that are set up in my way of receiving the beauty of who I am inherently just by being alive. And that exists within everybody, but we've just been caught up in these stories of what we think is important, what we think is the goal. So many people think fame and money is the goal. And yet the emptiest people, like I said before, are the ones that have the most money and fame, are the ones that have the biggest scarcity mindset. Like, what are we chasing? What is the prayer that's on our altar? And that's something that I always want to bring either to my podcast or to the content that I create, is like also the crunchy moments, the what the fuck moments, I got caught up in that. And now I'm going to do a podcast and I don't have any makeup and I'm going to be in my sweatpants and I'm going to bring it back to basics because it's not about that. And when did I get caught up in that again? And so it's like constant self-regulation, but realizing like just because you put an air filter on in the room for an hour and it cleans the energy in the room doesn't mean that it's constantly clean. It's recognizing that every day I got to put the filter on for at least an hour to clean the room and to make sure there's no stagnancy there. And that's what it means to do the work. Is it's not something that's just like a season. It's a life's work of using the discernment of enrichment over depletion and doing it enough for oneself so that we become the medicine. We become the vibration everywhere we go. And that's a byproduct of millions of micro decisions made in mundane moments that then allow us to have the highlight reel of our lives. And so this is the responsibility, the ability to respond that all of us have. Is like, how much am I loving today? How much did I laugh today? And how can my success parameter be based off of how much I laughed as opposed to how much money I made?
Yeah. It's so funny because I'm currently doing a master's program and I'm doing digital marketing. There's a class called influencer marketing. And, immediately what I could say about that class is that there's just this transactional like energy of like, oh, there's a brand, there's an influencer, money exchange, you're giving me money, I'm promoting your brand, I don't really care about your brand. And then that's what the industry has become. So I'd love to hear your sort of redefinition of what being an influencer means.
I've been called an influencer recently and I'm like, what? When did I become an influencer? Like, I don't want to be an influencer. Like,
but depends what definition you attach to it.
Right. Well, I was thinking like influence, because that term is loaded, I think. And at the same time, I do influence people. I influence people on a daily basis. I'm really active on my social media. I am sharing a lot of stuff. I have a podcast that is reaching millions of listeners. I am influencing people through what it is that I'm sharing. And so when I actually like felt into the responsibility of that, I felt into there's a piece in the Gene Keys called heart marketing. And when I believe in something, when it's genuinely changed my life, when it has genuinely made my life better, more evolved, sparklier, more exciting, more creative, more lovable, I'm going to share about it because I really believe in it. And so I had been sharing about the Gene Keys for many years on my social media, not for any agenda besides the fact that it has changed my life. I'm so grateful for it. It's one of the biggest influential pieces that have supported me with my evolutionary journey. It's not for everybody. It works for me. I'm going to share it. So I would do time lapses of me studying the Gene Keys and doing my readings, and I'd be placing it out loud. So then eventually, I the Jinkies reached out to me and said, like, we would love to give you an affiliate code. We're running another program if you wanted to be an affiliate. Now I'm learning still what it means to be an influencer and do brand deals. I don't have any sponsors of the podcast yet, unless it's my own business, or that I'm involved with. I have not had any brand deals. I did one collaborator thing with Gaia TV, and I had to like stage these photos that I was watching Gaia, and I was like, ugh. And so I canceled the contract early with the paintings, and I had Gaia on the screen, and I was like, what is this? This is not authentic. And it felt like I was becoming this plastic version of me. So I ended the contract. And when I did the Gene Keys affiliate, it was only because I was super passionate about the Gene Keys. Mm-hmm. So I did an Instagram live with Richard. I did a podcast where I mentioned the course. And then on my birthday, like months later, on my birthday, I received a PayPal for $22,111.11 on my birthday.
And the numbers.
From promoting the numbers on my birthday. And it was promoting a retreat about financial prosperity. And I literally didn't do anything. And this money just like went boom into my account, because what happened was I had been sharing about the Gene Keys without an agenda. Yeah. I had just been sharing because it had genuinely impacted my life. I created value for others without wanting to get anything in return, but genuinely just wanting to share what works. And then because I built this trust with people in their relationship to it, when I did promote a product, everyone was in. I sold 350 tickets to their retreat. I got a commission on every ticket, and it just so landed to be $22,111. So $22,111.11 into my PayPal on my birthday. Wow. And I was just like, whoa. And so I realized, yes, there's a lot of money in like being an influencer. And what I'm also super sad to see is like, you know, Instagram models promoting Bang energy drink. Like, have you looked at the ingredients of that stuff? Or like promoting Wendy's or McDonald's, or like, it's like, it pains me because all I see is consumerism profit. I don't see any heart marketing. I don't feel a deep relationship with the authenticity of the brand. And I also think that actually it's sad because you sold your soul for money. And whether you know it or not. And so I made a commitment. It's like, okay, don't judge the experience, but be better at it within myself. And so if you see me partnering with a brand like Becoming, or Florescence, which is my mystery school for women, or talking about Soma Vedic, which is the EMF blocker that I use, or talking about Symbiotica supplements that I use, or talking about Ilia, all natural, vegan, cruelty-free makeup that I use, I'm telling you because I'm passionate about it. Yeah. And it just so happens to be, then maybe I'll collaborate with that brand, but it's called heart marketing. And so I'm influencing people into making smarter decisions for themselves, for their health, for the evolution of their consciousness, for their self-awareness, and for things that have genuinely supported me from the inside out. So I will only ever mention brands that I believe in, that are sustainable, that support small businesses, that are eco-friendly. I'll only mention products that are genuinely, I know the ingredients to a point where I would never put anything on my skin that I wouldn't eat. Like this stuff then is infused with, okay, if I am an influencer, can I influence that which will support people to make better choices, not continuing to buy products off of Amazon, which is so ironically named because one of the contributing factors of why the Brazilian government are at it with the indigenous people of Brazil right now, trying to take away their rights, because we cannot consume enough as the supply or the demand is. So we're literally like chipping away at the lungs of this planet so that we can have Amazon Prime delivered at our door. Yeah. Like, what are we influencing? What are we influencing? And recognizing we are the media now. People don't wake up and watch the news. They wake up and watch Instagram stories. What are you saying? Even if you have 10 followers on your account, what are you saying? You put 10 people in a room, you got a class. What are you saying? You know, like, and I notice it within myself when I get caught up in being like, well, I want to get the attention of this guy I have a crush on, so I'm going to post a video of me like doing this. I can feel it in my body. I'm like, oh, I just like kind of grasp attention, and instantly I'll delete it because it's like, no, that's not the message. That's not what I'm saying. Just so I can get that tiny hit of serotonin that my crush is watching my stories and be like, oh, he watched it. Oh, cool. I'm going to do a little bit more. It completely bypassing my responsibility that actually I may be showing myself in a light that's going to make somebody else feel so deeply like, oh, I'm not that unworthy of. What would it look like to actually create body positive experiences? Or what would it look like to actually talk about my grief or my sadness or the death process? Or like, this actually is what I would want my daughter to watch, is a healthy example of a deeply embodied woman sharing her beauty because of how much she loves. I wouldn't want my daughter watching, I don't know, body modification experiences because believing that we need to reach some sort of impossible expectation of what beauty is. Yeah. So how can I be that which I would be inspired that my daughter would be a part of or to be watching, and feeling that deep sense of responsibility as an influencer.
Yeah. And it's the mothers and fathers are creating the leaders of the future, essentially. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between having a mother that is still in the energy of what you talk about, the maiden, or having a mother more in the energy of a mature, I think you call it the crone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And there's the 3-step archetypal process within women, which is the maiden, mother, and crone. And the maiden, hell, she thinks the grass is greener on the other side. She's all young and she's beautiful and she's got all this energy and she's excited, and she doesn't nurture the soil beneath her feet. She's off and out and thinks that the world's full of possibilities and is naive and but also like super fun and whimsical and adventurous. And then there's the mother archetype, which is and also the maiden's a little bit like much more insecure and thinks that the validation comes from outside of ourselves. And then there's the maiden, which the mother, which is birthing either creative projects or nurturing life outside of herself. The maiden thinks a lot about herself. The mother is more thinking about other beings, whether it's children or projects or communities. She has a lot less to prove, still a little bit, but like a lot less to prove. She's much more grounded and rooted within herself. And then there's the crone that ain't got nothing to prove. The crone knows exactly who she is. The crone doesn't speak unless it improves the silence. The crone is not afraid to say what she feels because she's not got that people pleaser energy in her anymore. And so there's like the archetypal journey of a deep rooted wisdom from that sprightly young age, and then the healthy transitions between the archetypes of just recognizing, hey, I'm in this stage of my life right now. That's beautiful. That's perfect. I'm going to mess up. This is my time for it. I'm going to learn. I'm going to data collection. I'm in trial and error. I'm learning what feels good. I'm learning what doesn't feel good. I'm learning what I don't want in relationships. I'm learning what I do want. There's these moments and these motions for it. And so the archetypal journey has really helped me to understand, okay, what stage in my life am I in right now? And how can I nurture that part of myself so that I can start to really feel the wisdom that comes with that archetype.
Beautiful, Blu. Thank you so much. Honestly, I think I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours more. I want to be respectful of the container. And we end every podcast with what I call the final trio, which are rapid fire questions that you could answer in any way that you want. The first two are personalized, of course, to the guest. And then the last one is one that we ask at the end of every single show. Before that, do some heart marketing on yourself, and where can we find you? Where can people connect with you, and what upcoming projects would you like to share with us?
So you can find me over on Instagram, pretty active over there, at Blu of Earth, Blu of Earth, over on Instagram. My website is bluofearth.com. And in my Instagram bio and everything, all the links to all of the things and the different offerings that I have going on. I'm also the host of the Deja Blu Podcast, which is on YouTube and all podcasting platforms on audio. So you can find me just by typing into Google Deja Blu Podcast. And then I am the co-founder of a modern mystery school for women. We have 7-week online programs teaching you all about the different pillars of the temple of activating a life of absolute magic, from gene keys to money medicine to manifestation to womb magic to sacred sexuality to healing our trauma around finances. I mean, there's just so many different pieces that we bring into the space, to activating your voice, to learning how to create your own medicine music, to working with the elements and building an altar, all different beautiful expressions through the Modern Mystery School, where we also have a sisterhood, where we have about 300 members, and it assists us from all over the world, where we have weekly classes and meetups and marketplace where you can sell your things, and just to marinate in other minds that see life in a similar way or on a similar path, to support and motivate and inspire. It's an uncensored social media, so that there's nothing censored. There's no words or nipple picture that is too much for us. It's a place of where we transcend comparison into inspiration, and from competition in healing the sister wound into a place of uplifting and inspiring each other. So that's the Florescence Sisterhood. There's also the Florescence programs, the podcast, social media, anything that I do outside of that, I usually share through my social media platforms, and you can continue to be in touch with everything that's being created.
That's so cool. And your podcast is in my top 3 rotation that I listen to regularly, and I've been really inspired by just the way that you conduct an interview, the way that you hold space, the way that you bring that presence, that creativity, because you're constantly like coming up with incredible loopholes and portals within a conversation. So, you know, it's beautiful to watch your growth and being on that path. And I just look forward to seeing the unfolding of your book, the Book of Blue. And now for the final trio, the first one is about this sort of spirit animal that we both share, which is right behind you for people that are watching on video. I wanted to ask you what the lion represents for you.
The lion represents to me courage to stand in one's truth, even if the world doesn't agree. The courage to listen to one's own heart, even if it completely contradicts what society wants from you. The courage to do something different, even if your mother or your father expect that from you. The courage to speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. The courage to creatively express yourself and be witnessed in it, because it's a prayer, not a performance. The courage to walk strongly and regally in the essence of one's own vulnerability and authenticity. And any time that I feel like I have become shut down, afraid, rejected, inadequate, I paint a lion. Always reminds me to come back to my center and remember who the fuck I am.
Yeah, that it's one of the most powerful animals in my view as well. Yeah, lions they're a trip. Next question I had is that you once said that you have to treat the world as if it is your canvas. So if you were given the opportunity to paint a huge mural for the whole world to see that would represent some message that you want to transmit, what would you paint on that mural?
Great question. I'm seeing like a giant planet, and I'm seeing hands around the outside of the giant planet, and all the hands are different shapes and sizes, children's hands, elders' hands, different colors. And I see that all the hands are like interlaced like this as they are around the world. And it's a representation that it's going to require all of us. And that because it's in a circle, there's no one above or below. There's no one that's more important than another, but it's a recognition if one hand comes out, it breaks the chain. And so it's going to require all of us to come together and to show up with an open palm, because when we're like this, we're still in resistance. But when we have an open palm, we're opening ourselves up to walk with peace. I come in peace. And I had an Indigenous elder recently share with me. I went to Aniwa Gathering, which is an Indigenous gathering of all of the Indigenous elders from around the world. And she said that when you want to address a clearing conversation or a challenging conversation, we come in like this, because we show that we have an open palm. We've got nothing to hide. We have peace in our hearts, and we're here to clear whatever it is that's needed. And so the palms would be open.
And it's almost also when we salute someone, when we wave like this. So it also has a deeper reason. When you paint that, can you let me know?
No. I'm not very good at painting hands, so I just set myself up for a really big challenge on this one. I'm like, I always avoid hands in paintings, and they're always like behind their back. I'll be like, how do I just do it so that there's no hand in this? And now I'm like, hands from all over the world for everybody, hands.
It's because you're used to painting those reptilian hands. Final question. Hopefully it's not the final one. I'd love to do this again, Blu.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Let's do it in person next time, please.
Okay, perfect.
We call this the time capsule question. And essentially it encourages us to travel a bit out into the future. Let's say beyond 2027. And that is a time sort of when the younger generations in the world right now are going to be stepping more into leadership positions. There's going to be sort of this new wave of leaders coming into society, different positions, different industries all around the world. And you were given the opportunity to take a time capsule, put it out into the future. Also, Deborah Silverman says that you come from the future and you're coming back to us. Putting it out there for these next generations, you could put in anything you want in this time capsule, and the purpose of what you would put in there. And we've had some wild answers. We've had some, it doesn't have to be something physical. It could be anything that you can imagine. And when this time capsule is opened, it's going to be opened by these next generation of leaders, and they're going to receive a transmission from you in order to lead into this new earth that we are co-creating all together. It's sort of this legacy that you're leaving behind within a time capsule. What would you put in there?
Damn, boy, you gonna throw one like that at me? Okay. Oh shit. What I would do, one of the things that I would do would be to get as many people together with a shared attention and intention, and I would place a big crystal in, or like a kind of like a crystal ball on the inside of the giant circle, and I would have these people for as long as possible to chant and sing the highest frequencies of love as a unity in a community, and to charge and send that attention and intention into the crystal, and to recognize that love will always be and has always been the answer to all of our challenges. And if we can collectively charge the frequency with the highest essence of love, and then to place that crystal in the time capsule with some direction around what this crystal holds, and to place it in the center of the council of leaders, and to return them back to their why before they start leading. Wow.
That was probably one of the dopest responses we've gotten. It comes out, it's almost to the level we had Lee Harris. He's the channel for the Z's. And I asked that question to the Z's. They're an entity group from the 9th dimension. And the answer was very aligned and similar to what you just said. So that answer came from the 9th dimension. I don't know.
Yeah. When you asked it, I was like, all right, Spirit, Mom, need your help on this one.
And it's cool because on the top of the time capsule, there's a emblem that you can carve in a question. So when they're about to open it, they get to receive a contemplative question to have in their toolkit. What would that question be?
The question that I would write down and they would receive?
Yeah.
What would love do?
Boom. Mic drop.
What would love do? I ask myself that question every single day. What would love do right now in this moment? What would love do when I'm triggered around this person? What would love do when I actually have neglected myself? Like, it always comes back to that.
That's powerful. Blu.
Simple.
I'm so grateful for you, for your mission in the world. It's been a beautiful process of synchronicities to be here talking screen to screen, but your energy was felt, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, for your brilliant questions, and for your epic hosting skills. I'm really excited to continue to witness this podcast flourish and reach the hearts and minds of millions of people. I see it.
Much love.